What's up, guys? Welcome to another episode of Invest Iowa. Today, I have young Wanot with me, and we're going to talk about mobile home parks, how he got it started in real estate. You mostly invest in Seattle, right? And I mean, the mobile parks all over but where are you currently investing the most?
What's up, Sebastian? Yeah, so currently about half my portfolio is in the Seattle metro area, so Seattle, Tacoma, and my mobile home parks I have four in Washington, one in Wisconsin, and two in New York, and hopefully soon to be a third one in New York. So a little bit spread out, but for the most part, half in Washington, half out of state.
That's amazing, dude. Thank you so much for coming. Let's get started a little bit about with how you got started in real estate and how old were you when you started?
Yeah, so I got started when I was 26, and that was in 2016. I was born in 1990. And so coming up on 7 years now. It's been an awesome 7 years. I used to work for Boeing, and I was in commercial contracts and did some airplane sales as well. And it was a cool job. Like, I got to travel around and I got to support big campaigns and work on a cool product, which is the Boeing aircraft. But I just saw a lot of my friends at Boeing do a lot better than me and work harder than me. And I was wondering what the difference was. And it turns out I just really wasn't passionate about the product or the industry. I just happened to fall into that. But it was not something that I dreamed about or thought about, or
Yeah.
it's not something that gave me a creative outlet. It was not something that I could see myself grinding at for 30 years because I just didn't care that much. And so I went
Yeah.
on a mission to figure out something that I can care about. You've felt that way, right? You've had jobs that you're like, what am I doing here? I'm getting paid
Yeah.
$10 an hour for what?
Yeah.
Right? I don't really care about this that much. And maybe I would if it gave me some ability to improve at it and achieve mastery and have creativity and have autonomy. But if it doesn't provide those things, then it's just another job. And I had enough of that. And so on the side, I started figuring out, what can I do to start making some real money, have that creativity, have that autonomy. And I failed at a couple other businesses, and I thought to myself, hey, I'll try renovating a house and making a million bucks that way. So I bought a shitty house for 130 grand, did a light renovation, got it rented, and I'm like, hey, why am I not a millionaire yet? What is this?
So you
So
pretty much you're pretty much a failed W-2 employee.
yeah, I'm now an unemployable millionaire, as they say.
Right.
Yeah, I did my best. I just wasn't cut out for it, you know. It's
Yeah.
the problem with W2 is your boss always wants you to do things. They constantly ask you to do things, and I was like, I only think half of these things are important, not all of them. And so I didn't want to do all the things my boss thought was important. I wanted to do what I thought was important, and I wanted to do something that I thought was going to get me further ahead in life and allow me to be creative and have flexibility. So that's how I found real estate investment, you know?
Do you think it was that being in a box where you're not getting paid to think was what was affecting you?
You know, I got paid to think on occasion. I think I had a boss that wasn't very friendly. So having someone that you don't feel has your best interest at heart, in control of a part of your destiny, that gave me a lot of pain. It was a very painful experience to experience that. And so because of that, I started looking at other options, right? That's how people leave jobs. They don't leave the job, really. They usually leave the boss. And so I got very lucky to have a very angry, I'll say, boss who I didn't think cared about me. And so that gave me an opportunity to start looking outside of my current position. And I think if you're experiencing pain in your life, that is a good thing. It feels very difficult in the moment, but later on, you'll realize that that pain was maybe trying to guide you somewhere else, right? Pain is a great guidepost in life and says, maybe go that way instead, or maybe go that way instead, because what you're doing is very painful. And so it allows you to try something new. I'm
Mm,
not saying go and quit something, but if you're giving something an honest effort for 6 months, a year and a half, and it's still painful every day, that's a problem. Maybe the universe is saying, try something else.
right. Right. So following back to now, you finally jumping into real estate. Is that something someone introduced you to, or how do you get your first touch into real estate?
You know, I was at my W-2 and I was saving $2,000 a month. I moved back in with my mom at 23 years old, and I was saving 2,000 a month, being very frugal. And then I was thinking, like, how do I get to $1 million? Okay, at 2,000 a month, that's like 20K a year. That's 50. I would need to work 50 years roughly to save $1 million here. So this is not going to work for me. So I just started Googling, paths to wealth. How do normal people build wealth? And starting a business is one of them, starting a product or a service, but another one is simply investing in assets and that cash flow. And so I just literally found it by Googling around, found Bigger Pockets community, read some books, started going to all the meetups, and set my criteria as I want to buy something that cash flows $500 a month in Tacoma, single or small multifamily, that's under $500,000 and requires under a $50,000 renovation budget. So very clear on my criteria. And then that's all I looked for. I looked for that every day. And guess what? I found it within about 6 months. I found my first house, got it purchased, renovated, rented, and I was cash flowing $500 a month. And that's when the light bulb went off. It's like $500 a month ain't shit. But if I can replicate this 10 times, now that's 5,000 a month. Now I can replace my Boeing income with passive income. And that's when the light bulb went off.
Right. And then, I mean, you think that the growth is not a straight line, but it's actually exponential in real estate because of all these strategies.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
How do you, okay, so you're flipping houses. Are you burn them, or are you just, do you stay in the housing industry or do you jump into commercial?
I stayed in residential for a while, and I really recommend folks to stay in residential because it's simpler than commercial, right? And there's a bigger buyer pool. So if you buy a house, you renovate it, and you want to get out of it, let's say a health issue comes up, or you want to move out of state, you don't want to deal with it anymore. Well, in residential, you have a huge buyer pool because tons of people want a house. Not tons of people want to buy or can buy a self-storage facility or an RV park or a single-use commercial space or a retail strip mall. But everyone wants a house, right? And so I really recommend you start with residential, and that's what I did. I bought 10 units in my first year, and then I focused on doing some flips, some wholesale, some new construction. I did a lot of various strategies in the residential space, short-term rentals, mid-term rentals, some creative financing. So I really did a little bit of everything before I figured, okay, I think I'm ready to scale up to commercial. And about 3 years ago is when I decided to get into commercial investing and analyzed a few different asset classes, mostly looked at what are called the uncorrelated assets. So assets that are not correlated to the price movement of single family homes in America. They're actually completely unlinked from that. So those assets are mobile home parks, RV parks, and self-storage, the uncorrelated assets. And I chose mobile home parks. And now I focus primarily on mobile home parks. I operate 7 mobile home parks and 225 units across the states. Last year was the first year I got to above $10,000 of net passive income just to myself. We distribute a lot more than that to all of our partners and even some of our employees, but it was a great feeling to feel like I finally achieved financial freedom, as they say, quote unquote, because I could live the rest of my life on 10,000 bucks a month if I, am modest in my spending. So I'm not going to be rich. I'm not going to be on yachts with champagne, but I could live the rest of my life on 10 grand a month for sure. By doing maybe 1 to 2 hours of work in managing the portfolio.
Right. Wow. That is amazing. How many years did it take you to be part of the amount of units that you're talking about now? 225, you said?
Yeah. It took about 6 years to get there.
Okay.
Yeah, about 6 years, 5.5, 6 years to get to 225 units. And some people do it faster, some people do it slower. Ultimately, as long as you are learning new things and buying new properties every year, that's all that really matters. You can't compare yourself to everyone else on
Right.
social media because you'll get depressed.
Yeah.
But what you can do is compare yourself to where you were when you started, where you were last year, and think about, am I growing? Am I growing my portfolio? Am I growing personally? And that's all that really matters. So
Right. 100%. And then let's go back to the mobile home parks. But first of all, like, explain to me why these type of assets are not correlated to the rest of the housing market.
sure. So, for example, let's look at why I got into mobile home parks. I'll explain that to you, Sebastian. So, I looked at my portfolio. I had about 5 or 6 million bucks of residential real estate at the time. And I thought, okay, it was like 2019, 2020. And I was like, hey, America has a recession roughly every 10 years or so, every 10 years, right? So you had like the dot-com bust, then you had 2008. And I really thought we were overdue for a recession. So I thought, hey, I want to buy something that helps me spread my risk out of single family rentals, which, as you know, in 2008 got crushed and values dropped 10, 20, 30, 40%. A lot of people lost their homes in foreclosure. And so I figured, how can I spread my risk a little bit? And that was one of the reasons I got into mobile home parks. And that's why they're unrelated to the value of single family homes. Because if you think about it, in a recession, what people do, the first thing they do is they cut their spending. So, and what's people's single biggest line item that they spend money on every month?
Mortgage.
Right, mortgage or rent. And
Yeah.
so if you rent a $4,000 apartment, you might say, hey, there's a recession, I'm going to go to a $2,000 apartment. If you rent a 2,000, you might go to 1,000. If you're a family living in a $1,000 apartment and there was a recession and you lose your jobs, your only option might be to rent a trailer in one of my mobile home parks for $400 and have your family live there, because your other option is to be homeless, really, right? And so in a recession, theoretically, I haven't personally been through a recession with my mobile home parks, but I'm excited to see if this concept actually holds true. It makes logical sense to me. I don't know if it is actually practical, but you would think one could surmise that in a recession, when people downgrade their housing, I should theoretically have more demand for my $400, 700 square foot, 2 bed, 1 bath, or my 1,000 square foot, 3 bed, 1.5 bath house that costs $400 than I did before the recession, right? And so that's why the value of the park and also the rents of the park and etc. are not necessarily related to single family home, because they serve a different purpose, right? We provide the most affordable housing in America. Simply put, there's nothing cheaper on a regular basis than a manufactured home in a manufactured housing community.
Okay, that makes sense. So because of in terms of a crisis, these houses are not gonna have less demand. These what do you call them? Mobile home parks. Would you consider
Mobile
them
homes, yep.
houses? Mobile homes.
Yeah, I mean, they're homes. They're not houses.
Right.
They're not real estate. So that's the big difference in mobile home parks you have to be aware of is manufactured homes, unless they're set on a foundation and affixed to the ground, they're not real estate. They're personal property, just like a car, right? Because they're brought in on a truck and then they're set on kind of these concrete posts or pillars. but they're not actually affixed to the ground. They can be moved technically. They don't move once they're set, but they can. And so they're not real estate. So they're not a house. They are a mobile home. And that also impacts the debt that you can get for it, right? You can't get a 30-year fixed mortgage for a mobile home because it's not real estate. That's a real estate loan. But so you have to get a chattel loan, which is chattel is like personal property loan. So it's a lot higher interest rate. So if you'd like to buy a new manufactured house for 100 grand, you can, but you're probably going to pay 8 to 10% interest on that loan because it's, again, it's not real estate, it's personal property.
Okay. And in terms of a business model, is it considered real estate? Do you get deductions for these places?
Yeah, so what I own is the mobile home park, and that's
Oh,
different than a single mobile home, right? So I own a piece of land that is a community of mobile homes.
okay.
So, for example, my first park I bought, it's a 26 home community. I own the acreage, it's 5 acres, and other people own mobile homes that they put on my land and they pay me $400 a month, right? 400 bucks a month is not much. But if you have 26 units, it adds up, right? And so they own their own home. I own the land. I provide them utilities to their home, water, sewer, garbage, electricity. And I provide the community rules. So I have a manager that's there that does maintenance to the roads, that chops down trees if they fall down on someone's home, that takes care of barking dogs, that hosts a community picnic or a barbecue for folks, that enforces the rules, that tells us about any issues there. So I have to pay that person to manage the community. But the great thing about mobile home park investing is I don't own the homes, so I don't maintain the homes. So Sebastian, that's another reason I got into mobile home parks, is because I own just single and small multi-family properties. And in 1 month, I was managing all of them. I had 3 washers break, and I got so sick of having to deal with things breaking in my houses that I said, I love the cash flow here and I love the appreciation. How can I continue getting cash flow and appreciating assets without so much operational headache? And with mobile home parks, you don't own the home. So that's one less thing you have to own and one less thing you have to maintain. So that's why I love mobile home parks. It's more control, same cash flow, same appreciation, more control, less ownership, right? So maybe you've heard Rockefeller say that. Oh, control everything, own nothing. And mobile home parks are not that, but they're closer to that, right? They
Oh,
are closer
wow.
to that. And so I don't own a single toilet. Okay. Actually, I do own some of the homes, like 10 or 15, I think I have left. I'm selling them now to people that want to buy a home. Some of them some of them we give away for free. Do you want a free house? If you get lucky, I might give you a free house. You might have to put in a few $1,000s to fix it up and clean it up before you can move in. But we've literally given away a house for free. All you have to do is pay us the $400 a month lot rent, right? And you can live in the community in a house that you control. We can't come into your house and say, hey, fix that toilet. Like, look, you own it. It's your house. So you can paint it purple or pink or rainbow. We don't care. You can, inside of your home can be whatever you want. So it's not like renting an apartment where you can't just change the floors. Well, it's your house. You can change the floors. You can do anything you want to it. We're not going to bother you. As long as you meet the rules of the community, you're welcome to enjoy your house as you wish. Now, some homes we sold for 30,000 or 40,000 because they're newer or nicer. But that's there's benefits to the landlord, because I don't want to have to fix your toilet. If I have the option, I want you to do it. And so the benefit to me is less operational input. The benefit to the owner is I can't come in and tell them what to do with their house. They can do what they want as long as the outside is safe and looks okay and there's not a blue tarp on it. Then it's your home. Feel free to do with it as you wish. You can give it away to your daughter, your granddaughter. You
Wow.
can do what you want with it as long as you are
Yeah.
reasonable.
Yeah, this is pretty similar to selling on contract in the ways that you are not responsible for the house, right? You just take away landlord from the equation.
Right.
In terms of the management that it takes, I know that we've talked about you're not a landlord anymore. How similar is it to a multifamily property? What are some of those things that you do and some of those things that you no longer need to do?
Well, in comparison to multifamily property, we still have to manage it, so it's the same.
Is it a full-time on-site manager?
It is a it is a it's I would say it's a part-time role. My parks are all between 30 and 50 units. So that requires part-time, but it is, I would say, at least 20 hours a week
Okay.
for a 50 unit park, for example. They live either on site in a trailer or they live close to the park, maybe 10 or 15 minutes away from the park, so they can deal with issues as they come up.
Right.
So we still have to have management. We still own land, same as multifamily property. We still own utility lines, just like multifamily property, that are on our property. Still have to pay taxes and have insurance and all of that. But the big difference is we don't own the homes. So in multifamily, the value of the structure or the fourplex, let's say, is in many cases more expensive than the land. In
Right.
our case, the land might be 100,000 and the mobile home park value of the roads and the utilities and everything else could be 1 million. And so while we don't own a lot of real estate, we own a lot of land. And the nice thing is because the land values are low and the value of everything else is quite high, like the utilities and the roads and the concrete pads, we can depreciate all of those things in the first year. So this gets a little complicated, but just understand this. If you buy a mobile home park for $1 million, typically in year one on your tax return, you will get a $700,000 loss.
Okay.
So buy $1 million mobile home park, $700,000 loss. So let's say, Sebastian, you made $500,000 in your wholesale company last year.
Mm-hmm.
If you bought a mobile home park for about $800,000, you could get a $500,000 loss on your tax return, and you would pay zero income tax on all of your wholesale income.
That's insane. And that's because of the, are you doing, no, you're not doing a cost segregation, right? You're just doing a depreciation of the assets, or what are you specifically?
We do a cost segregation study. Yep. And then it's called bonus depreciation. So with mobile home parks, RV parks, self-storage, and ATM businesses, gas stations, you can bonus depreciate, ask your CPA or your accountant. You can bonus depreciate a lot of the value of those assets in the first year. So you can get a big loss the first year that you buy that asset, and you can use that loss to offset your other income and not pay federal income tax, which is great.
Wow, that's the cheat code. That's what everybody talks about. And then could you define to me bonus appreciation or depreciation?
Yeah, it's just I don't want to get too in the weeds, but depreciation is just basically I'll explain it simply. Like if you buy a house that's worth $1 million, the government says, okay, like for tax purposes, we think the value of this $1 million house will go down because things break down. Wood breaks down, the roof breaks down. So we'll let you take basically roughly it's 1/27th, I think 1/27th of the value as a loss on your tax return, because this year you lost $30,000 of value on the house, and this year you lost $30,000 of value, and this year, the wood chipped away a little more, and the stairs started breaking, and the paint started chipping. So we'll let you take a $30,000 basically expense on your tax return. It's not a real expense; it's just a book expense, right? So it just shows up on your tax return, and if you make $30,000 of income and you have a $30,000 depreciation expense, then you made zero income. And so you don't pay a tax. So that's depreciation. And bonus depreciation is just an accelerated depreciation schedule. So normally in commercial real estate, like the roads and utilities and concrete pads, those things are normally depreciated over 15 years. But if you buy a mobile home park or an RV park or a gas station, there's something called bonus depreciation, which lets you take those 15-year assets and depreciate them all in year one.
Wow.
You get a big loft immediately, which is great.
Okay. And then for year two, you're probably gonna try to find another asset that way, so to offset more and more and more of that.
That's the problem. You have to keep buying these assets to keep getting the losses.
Okay.
It's a
Well,
problem.
it's a good problem. It's a good problem to have.
A problem and a solution. Yeah, both.
Yeah. And then in terms of creative finance structures, have you bought any of these mobile home parks with uh creative strategies that are not cash?
Yeah, for sure. So 6 out of 7 of my mobile home parks were bought with seller financing. So we love seller financing. Seller financing is like the cheat code, especially in this interest rate environment where interest rates for mobile home parks right now can be 9%, 10% interest.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm under contract on a $1.8 million mobile home park that we have at 3.2% interest rate.
Wow.
Why did we get such a low rate? Because the seller wants the high price. I said, okay, we can pay you a high price if you give us the right terms. So Cody Sanchez says this. She says, your price, my terms, right? My price, your terms. So you can't have everything. If you want a high price, your price, my terms. My terms are 3.2% interest, 10-year loan term, no prepayment penalty. I want to slice and dice in there. I want to have this loan be fully assumable so I can give it to the next guy after 5 years. They got 5 more years left. I want all these very specific terms, right? I want it to be non-recourse, so you can't come after my other assets if something goes wrong. So there's a lot of great terms that I'm willing to pay a much higher price for. There are endless amounts of terms. You can figure out how to pay almost any price if you get the right terms.
Okay. And in terms of how much money you're putting down on a creative finance deal, of course you can structure for whatever you want, but what have you found is the average number?
Average for us is about, I would say 15 or 17%.
Okay.
Sometimes we're able to get away with 10%. And that's great. If we have more of a relationship, maybe people are willing to accept less down.
Yeah.
And in some cases, we're willing to put down 25% if it's a really great deal, as long as we get good terms.
Yeah. What's your average owner of these type of properties, of these type of assets?
The average owner, actually, every single owner is an older person that just wants out. They want to retire. They want out of the game, and they're boomers, right? We hear about this wealth transfer. Well, I'm living it. This is the transfer of wealth happening from the boomer generation to millennials to Gen Z, and it's happening right now. You're either a part of it or you're not. So if you have bought something from a boomer, you're a part of it. And if you haven't, what are you doing? Get on it.
Yeah. So in these cases, these sellers are looking for just a consistent cash flow over time, just a security. They don't need everything up front. Will that be type of where the conversation will go?
Sometimes, yeah, we attempt to steer the conversation that way. We say, hey, Mr. Bob, or hey there, Sally, how does 5,000 a month sound? Could you live your life on $5,000 a month? Because we could give you 100,000 today and 5,000 a month for the rest of your life. Could you live a nice life on 5,000? What could you do with $5,000 a month? And we try not to worry too much about the rates and initially, right? We just try to focus on, hey, how do you like this down payment? How do you like this monthly payment? And of course, not everyone's going to be receptive to that. But if they are, then we just focus on that, and then we figure out whatever terms will get us there later. But if they're not receptive to that, and they want, hey, I really need 6%. Okay, is that the most important thing to you? Okay, so we'll get you 6%, and we need it to be interest only. and we need a 15-year loan term, and we don't want to make a payment for the first 6 months because we have to do value add. So if you know what's most important to them, give them that, and then get some other things that are important to you.
Okay, yeah, it's all part of the negotiation on creative finance. Do you see mobile home parks being built? Is it cheaper to build than to buy one?
It depends. It really depends. I would say in most cases, it is cheaper to buy one often. Depends where you're buying. You're in Iowa, right?
Yeah.
In Iowa, it's probably cheaper to buy an existing one. Unless you're smack dab in the middle of the city, but then the city probably doesn't want you to build it. So if in Washington, where I'm from, it's very expensive here to buy a mobile home park. So, we just saw a mobile home park trade for 100,000 a unit. A very nice park. It had a lot of double wides, so you could buy single wide or double wide or triple wide. It's just how many sections of the home come
Right.
in on a truck. So single wide, you can bring in on one truck. A double wide, you might need an extra wide load, or two trucks, bring in the halves and put them together on site. And so if you have a lot of double wides, banks really like that because then it looks like a normal community. It looks like a subdivision, right? If you have a bunch of single wides and RVs, banks don't like it as much. So ideally, you're finding some communities with some double wides, and you buy that. And in that, I forgot what the question was.
Yeah, just if it's easier to buy than to,
Oh, that's right.
build it.
It is. I would say it's definitely easier to buy it. One of my friends built a mobile home park, and it took him 4 years. It was a big park, but I promise you, you can find a mobile home park to buy in a lot less than 4 years. And it's cheaper in most cases to buy an existing park than it is to build a new one. So I've heard of people building new mobile home spaces all in for about 40,000 a pad. But if you're looking at parks in Iowa, I bet you can start finding some parks that you could buy for 15,000, 20,000 a pad. So half the price or less. It's cheaper, it's easier in most cases to buy an existing park. If you're going to build a park, it can be very difficult because a lot of cities and jurisdictions, they don't want new mobile home parks because mobile home parks, number one, they have a bad rap, right? So people associate mobile home parks with like prostitution and drug dealing and crime and issues. And so cities don't want that.
Right.
Now, mobile home parks can be that if they're mismanaged and the landlord lets anyone move in. But when we buy a mobile home park, that's the first people we kick out. You're doing crime, you're selling drugs. I have little kids running around here. We absolutely will not allow that, right? This is a family-oriented community. And so the first thing we do is get rid of the drug dealers and the people that could cause harm. And the other reason that cities do not want mobile home parks is because it doesn't make sense economically. So, for example, my mobile home park in Georgia, that first one I bought, 26 units, the tax assessed value of that park is like $400,000. And so we pay like $8,000 in property tax. But here's the kicker, we have 26, most of them are families, 26 units. There's probably 50 kids in that school. Each one of those kids costs the public school district $10,000 to put them in school, right?
Right.
And so, and where does that money come from? It comes from tax revenue, right?
Right.
Pay taxes and it goes to pay for schooling, for example. So you have 50 kids charging 10,000 each. That's $500,000 in tax revenue that's going to fund this, basically fund the education of my tenants. And while I'm paying like $8,000 in property tax, so the revenue to the cost just doesn't pencil for cities. They don't like it. So
So
it's
if
very
it doesn't
difficult.
if it doesn't benefit the government, then it's not likely to stick around for a long time. How are you planning against that?
Sure, yeah. I mean, even though a lot of governments do not want new mobile home parks, they will not tear down your mobile home park because they recognize they would end up in every news article in America if they said, "Hey, we're forcing you to shut down this 50 homes of affordable housing." They would never do that, right? So,
Okay. Okay, that makes
I
sense.
believe the existing supply is protected from the government, but they don't like new parks in many cases. Of course, some places will let you build a mobile home park, but not everywhere. It's not like a single family home where you could just build that anywhere. Everyone welcomes a single family home. Not everyone welcomes a mobile home park. And so that is a good thing if you think about it, because we have a restricted supply, right? So the supply is not really going to get bigger. However, there's always more real estate investors that are interested in mobile home parks, especially with the advent of Brandon Turner saying, sell Brandon Turner a park. I'm buying mobile home parks now. Warren Buffett got into mobile home parks 20 years ago. In 2003, he bought Clayton Homes for $1.6 billion so he could get into the mobile home park game. He wanted to just produce debt for them, produce
Right.
loans, but he bought Clayton Homes, which is the biggest mobile home manufacturer in the world. Now he also has 21st Century, which is the biggest mobile home park financing arm. And so mobile home parks have been on the rise in terms of popularity. However, we have a restricted supply and we have an increasing demand. So what does that do? Increases the price of existing supply. And so that's good for me because I own and I want the price to go up.
Of course. Yeah. And at the same time, like $400 just doesn't seem anything that nobody will that most people should be able to afford that just by having a part-time job.
That's it. You could go out, do 3 days of labor or 2 days if you're decent and make $400, right?
Right. Yeah.
So any able-bodied American can earn that. Not only that, even if you're disabled, we have a lot of disabled folks that are on fixed income. They get paid 1,200 bucks a month or 1,500 a month,
Mm,
and it's still less than 25 or 30% of their income, even though they don't work. So we're happy to provide affordable housing to anyone that wants it.
where do you see now mobile home parks going for the future? What are you planning to do in the foreseeable future? I don't know if you plan for 5 years, if you plan for 10 years, but what's on your mind?
Well, my goal is to provide affordable housing to 10,000 people. Right now, we have about 500 to 600 tenants, so I have a long way to go. Basically, need to 20x my existing portfolio to meet my goal. So continue buying mobile home parks, continuing to add value, put in better management, fix the health issues, kick out the people that are committing crime, and provide family-friendly housing at an affordable rate to folks, and continue doing that with creative financing like seller financing, sub-2, master lease with option, and keep growing the portfolio. And maybe someday, once there's a demand, or if there's a demand, we'll start to maybe slowly remove some old homes and put in tiny homes, right? And if housing becomes cost prohibitive in areas like Seattle or surrounding areas, then maybe we could buy old mobile home parks and turn them into tiny housing communities. That's always an option, because you can't just put a tiny house anywhere currently, but you can certainly put it in a place that allows a mobile home or RV, because tiny houses are like basically small mobile homes that
Mm,
are on a trailer, right? It's like a trailer. So
yeah.
that's a nice option if you want to try to upgrade your park. But there's also many other upgrades that are more feasible today that don't require this kind of new interest in a tiny home community.
Right. I
So
think it's in Texas where I was watching a video on affordable houses and they're building blocks that are half the size for 100K, but they are ridiculously small.
yeah, you'll see a lot more of it soon. I'm surprised to see it in Texas, maybe in Austin, just because land is so cheap in Texas. But in places like Seattle, where land is very expensive, I expect to see these within the next 5 or 10 years for sure. A lot more very tiny houses that people are buying.
They look like ADUs.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. They're gonna keep getting smaller. And that's just the way that the world goes. I mean, look at Have you been to New York City, Sebastian?
I haven't. I haven't.
In New York City, it's you can basically you can't find a single family home that's detached with a yard, right? If you go there, just look around at all the housing. It's all attached. It's all either like condos or it's attached townhomes. They don't have yards. Like they might have a little backyard, a little front yard, but they don't have side yards because everything's attached. Eventually, all housing will become attached, right? In cities. And so, yeah, you're going to have a lot more smaller housing product like a tiny home be an attractive option, I think.
Wow. Yeah. No, I have lived in a big city and lived in places similar to New York from what you're talking, and it's not a pleasant experience.
Right.
It's yeah, not enough space, man. Um, what's the best way to reach out to you if people want to connect with you?
For sure. Yeah. So if you want to learn about mobile home parks, I've got a mobile home park class and mentorship program coming out in the next couple of months. So watch for that. I'll be posting about it on my Facebook and on my Instagram. My Instagram handle is grow with Jan and GROW with JAN. My Facebook, I have a Facebook group called WARI, Washington Real Estate Investing, or alternatively known as Wealth and Real Estate Investing. And you can find that by going to facebook.com/groups/WAREI.
That's
That's it.
amazing. Amazing one. Thank you so much for your time. I learned a lot. I think it was very productive. I have a better understanding of mobile home parks now, and I'm ready to have
Good.
conversations about it with some other people.
Awesome, man. Let's do it. Let's find some deals.
All right. If you guys made it this far on the video, subscribe, hit the like button, follow Jan for more information, and I'll see you guys on the next one.